Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar titled Four Competencies of Tomorrow's HR Leaders. My name is David Rice. I am the editor of the HR Exchange Network and your host for the day's proceedings. We're joined today by a distinguished panel, but before we get around to introductions and all that, I do just have to run through a few housekeeping items first. Should you run into any technical issues during today's presentation, just submit any questions that you have around those issues to us in the Q&A widget. Someone from the HR Exchange Network team will attempt to help you sort those out as best they can. That same widget will be used to submit questions to our speakers. So we encourage you to do that throughout the presentation, and hopefully we'll get to them at the end during the Q&A portion of the event. As always, you can earn SHRM credit for today's presentation, for live attendance at this event. Details on how to redeem those will go out after the presentation has concluded, so be on the lookout for that. All right, before we jump right in, we do have a bit of a poll, and I want to go ahead and put that up, and I'll ask you to vote in that. And the question that we want to ask as we set out on this journey is, what HR competency are you looking to improve amongst your team this year? And we're going to basically provide these four options of vision, or organizational sensitivity, networking, or adaptability. I think we can all agree that the HR function is seeing challenges that it's never seen before. It's certainly not what I thought it was when I got into covering HR, which was, primarily a compensation and benefits function and, hiring. It's all kinds of things now. And we're in this place where HR's role within the leadership structure of our organizations is evolving. And with that comes some changes in the demands that HR leaders face. So I'm really interested to see kind of what it is that the audience wants to see. Their own organizations and their own HR leaders kind of evolving too. So I'll give it about 15 more seconds, and then we'll take a look at the results, and then we'll get started. All right, we've got quite a few results coming in now. It looks good. So we will just take a look here. So about a quarter of the audience said vision. 1/3 said organizational sensitivity. Networking was not quite as popular at this point, and adaptability was 37% almost. So I think that says a lot about where we are as organizations. Just to give you an idea of what we're going to cover today, we're going to kind of go through these little lightning talks here in a second where we talk about those four competencies. But I do want to, then we'll get into a panel discussion and some Q&A, but I do want to introduce everyone first. So I'm going to kick it off with Linda Schaefer. She is the Chief People Officer at Checkr. Linda, give us a little introduction.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So I am Checkr's Chief People and Operations Officer. I've been with Checkr for coming up on 5 years. And Checkr, as many of you know, we help our customers run background checks using AI-powered technology so that any company, big or small, can make safer, more informed hiring decisions in less time. As a people leader, I guess as many of you I have grappled with the many challenges facing companies this year in particular. And I guess also in the context of high growth, how do we maintain culture as the company scales? How do we do that as we are all remote? How do we get the right leadership in place? And I think importantly, how can technology enable scale? Prior to Checkr, I led operating teams at growth companies in media and telecom, including roles at a company called Sense Networks, a small company, as well as Nielsen and Accenture. And I'm looking forward to talking to all of you today.
Perfect.
Hi, my name is Jerome Turning. Yeah, thank you. My name is Jerome Turnick. I'm the founder and CEO of SmartRecruiters. We're a talent acquisition suite. We're like the generational successor to that old applicant tracking system that you love to hate. And we deliver hiring success to organizations. So we help you hire amazing talent on demand, internally and externally. So obviously been a really interesting year of change and acceleration for us across the board. And for all of our customers, we have about 1,000 customers around the world, including large companies like Twitter or LinkedIn or Visa or Bosch. And in all of these organizations, we've seen a lot of transformation happening, and excited to share some of that with you. And also, as a founder and CEO of a company, we've seen how our own organization evolves. We have about 400 people around the world, and embracing that change. And in a high growth or hyper growth environment, we're growing like 70% year over year. It's been interesting as well to see the evolution of HR internally as well. So thank you for having me today.
I will go to Aaron next.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me on today. I'm Aaron Hagman, the owner and CEO of Delivery Drivers Incorporated. We're a third-party HR partner that specializes in contingent labor. The 1099 conversation is really where we spend a lot of our world, but looking at all aspects of HR in a rapidly growing and changing world. I've run the company for over 25 years, and as an entrepreneur, I've been involved in a lot of different businesses, and candidly, I have a passion for human resources, because at the end of the day, the people are at the core of our businesses and success and growth. And I'm really looking forward to the varying points of our conversation today. So thanks for having me on.
Excellent. All right. And then Neil.
Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you all. So my name is Untitled Chapter. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Sense. We basically serve high-volume hiring companies, whether they are in temp staffing or they are in full-time hourly workers. So we serve across a wide variety of labor pool. Our companies use and customers use our software to leverage automation and communication to basically attract, engage, and retain their talent throughout the talent journey. We have over 500 customers now, and are growing pretty fast. And I think the unique point of view that we have around what's happened since the last year is that we have a point of view around what's happening in temp work, and also view that's what's happening in full-time hires. And I'll be able to share that with a lot of you today.
Excellent. All right. So, we all know that the role of the HR leader, it looked significantly different in 2012. Than it will in 2022. And, whether that's the increase of HR systems, push towards operational efficiencies, the ability to adopt new technology. Tomorrow's HR leaders, they need to be strategic business leaders as well. And I know as a group, you all have looked at a pretty robust list of business competencies. And when you think about the role of the HR leader of the future, I'm curious to know, what is it that you think is going to be the most important competency for that person to possess and to continue to develop? And we'll start with you, Jerome.
Thank you. Yeah, I put down vision, actually. I think that the world has been changed in a way that the future of work really, really looks different from the past. And that means that a lot of executives have just turned around to their HR leader and say, all right, what do we do now? And the ability for HR to really step back from the daily routine and the processes and the compliance and, just everything that worked before, and kind of step back and say, hold on, actually, what does HR, why is HR here? What does the future of work mean? How are we going to match skills to jobs on a grander scale? How are we going to embrace remote work? What does that even mean? What is the impact for culture? What is the impact, obviously, on mental health and people performance? What does that mean in hiring? And are we able to hire people anywhere in the world or not? Should we just wait and all go back to the office? Actually, do we need offices? Well, if we need offices for collaboration and creativity, do we still need a desk? And what does that mean for office hours? Like vision and clarity of vision for me has been the number one skill for HR executives this year. And one that for the first time, maybe HR really is getting not only a seat at the table, they're actually standing and giving an address to the entire executive team, because everybody looked at HR and went like, okay, what do we do now? And it's a very, very interesting moment in time for all the HR leaders that are leaning in and kind of saying, okay, guys, I know what to do. And that can actually help organization transform. So that would be my core competency, clarity of vision.
Next, we will go to Linda.
Great, thank you. I chose organizational sensitivity. And to me, this is really an awareness of how an organization and a team, how everyone is actually working, and understanding what the team is ready for and what leadership you need to drive change in the company. And I think we are feeling all kind of hyper aware right now of how our teams are feeling and working in this remote environment, how we're going to bring people back to work, and what is that going to look like. And I think it's a key role for the HR leader to help the whole company navigate that kind of change. And really ultimately affects the success of the business. One example that kind of stands out to me as I look back at Checkr's own history, and this is like a pre-COVID example, but I think highlights how understanding organizational readiness is important. We were a little startup when I joined the company where the whole team was in one room, and the engineers could look to the left and tell sales a new product feature was coming, and look to the right and tell operations that another feature was coming. And it took all of one stand-up meeting to communicate a launch plan. And as we grew, we struggled with that. We had teams on multiple floors and then in multiple offices and geographies. And we couldn't just have, our engineering manager just lean over and make a plan. And we recognized we needed a new, more formal process for launching and releasing product. And we built this beautiful launch plan, and it looked beautiful. It had all the right check boxes, and every stakeholder was represented. And on paper, it was amazing. And it totally bombed. We weren't ready for that level of process. It was too much for the state of our team, and people really got tripped up. And we had to pull back and really think about, given where the team was and what leadership we had in place, like what was the right process for that point in time. So I think, to me, organizational sensitivity is about having your radar on how you affect change. I think, vision sort of sets out where you want to go and what that direction is. And to me, organizational sensitivity is about how do you take that and translate that into the right action for your team.
Excellent. Next up, we'll do Aaron.
Hey, everybody. Good to talk to you again. I think from the survey, I got 7% and the low score on today's poll. So I'm here to convince you of the importance of networking now. I have a new objective today in our future of the human resources world. And I want to start off with the idea that by embracing and leaning into networking, as human resources leader, there are specific pieces of our jobs and our organizations that we can directly impact through amazing networking. Recruiting, employee engagement, employee development, which is a big one to me, and subsequently even down to employee retention. We've heard the theme today of a changing and evolving world. And that is absolutely true in all aspects of our business when we think of HR. At DDI, we're in a very high volume environment. We're onboarding hundreds and sometimes thousands of workers for clients in short periods. And leaning into networking for some of these resources is just absolutely needed. And it comes down to the idea that we are in a shrinking world from a globalization standpoint. And you all kind of, are aware that the economy is generally trending in the right direction, especially post-COVID, is, at least optimistically we're looking at, and that's going to lead to lower unemployment. So leaning into networking, developing these skills, and these skills amongst our senior leadership team behind us is an important piece to our overall skill set. And last but not least, the thought I have here to kick us off today is it becomes a digital conversation. Networking can mean more than just, oh, hey, I connected with Linda on LinkedIn after our webinar today. It's creating content, actually participating in conversations, and really getting everybody involved in what we're trying to accomplish as leaders in our companies and as HR leaders.
Excellent. And we'll go to Anil for adaptability.
Yeah, I think looks like I picked the winner. So 37% of the respondents chose adaptability. But it's really been the year. Let me date myself first. I don't know whether people still remember the year 2000, and everybody was freaked out about Y2K. It was when we thought all our computer systems would fail, and how would we run our digital experiences. But pretty soon, like, the engineers shone and became the stars, right? They proved to us that they got us through the tough time. And now fast forward 2020, and it's the HR teams, it's the CHROs, it's the HR practitioners that have shown in a very, very tough year. I think the number one thing is, not only have organizations overall been extremely flexible, they've been agile, they've also been willing to change plans as things have evolved and changed. And through my customer's lens, I want to share sort of 3 experiences that I've seen, hopefully, that highlights what happened. So we work with a lot of Fortune 500 companies, with some of the largest staffing companies in the world. And we saw them running, they would check in with the employees maybe once a year. They would get those big Medallias and Qualtrics softwares and run the survey. Once a year, employee engagement survey, right? Pretty soon, some companies switched to once a month. Forget about like convincing them to get to quarter. They were doing it on a monthly basis. Some leading edge companies are doing still on a weekly basis. We just heard from Salesforce. They are running it still on a weekly basis. So again, really trying to check in on the employee health and employee productivity became the number one goal first for CHROs and HR leaders. Number 2 was the impact of what I noticed around automation. So everything had to be done, but it had to be done remotely. I think Aaron mentioned that, how the hell are they hiring thousands of drivers, thousands of people, workers, but not trying to do it remote? It's a crazy world, right? So people had to adopt. I'll give you a worse example there, which is like when you have to fire and lay off thousands of people globally. How did you do it? I won't name names, but these companies figured out a way to automate their layoffs, right, which they had never done before. Last thing I'll mention is adaptability with your culture. So we work with a retailer that has about 400,000 associates across the US, right? So one of the cultural values is taking care of each other, taking care of the associates. What did they do during the time of COVID? When it hit, they gave another 80 hours of PTO to all full-time hourly workers. On the part-time side, they immediately rolled out the benefits and gave 20 hours of PTO, right? So again, because of HR leadership, because of the vision, companies were able to adapt and be true to themselves. And I think a point that Jerome mentioned, which will hopefully come throughout this conversation, which is allowing HR now to finally have the seat at the table that they always wanted to, but it's actually happened post-COVID.
Absolutely, yeah, it has, and adaptability is certainly something that's on everybody's mind in this crisis kind of environment. But I think it's easy to see from what you all said right there that all these things play a vital role. As we get into sort of this digital transformation era that we're entering, or that we've kind of been in, but that continues. We see so much data around COVID-19. It's rapidly pushing organizations into that digital transformation. Like I said, it feels like a process that's happened overnight. I don't think it has been quite overnight, but it feels that way due to the nature of this whole thing. And this is no different for the HR department. Many CHROs, they're thinking about transformation for their own processes and teams. And so as leaders who have been through that process, I'm curious, what are your thoughts on how to build an effective HR technology stack? I want to start with Jerome on this one.
Yeah, I mean, I would say in a very simple way, start with the users. Like the effectiveness of your HR technology stack is not measured by how beautiful it looks in the sales presentation or by how beautiful it looks on your overall vision. It's actually measured by, are the end users seeing value in it? And it's a common theme that we see across many of our customers is that when you have one big platform, typically a big HR suite, which is kind of okay for everything, but is not really good at anything in particular, who does it really serve? Right? It serves the IT people who are like, okay, I want to have one platform. It's going to be easier. It might serve the boardroom, which, okay, it seems we take one solution and everything, all our problems go away. But does it actually serve the end users? And we see this in talent acquisition a lot, where companies are actually moving from, oh, I have this big HR suite and I use the recruiting module of my HR suite, and you know what, it's good enough. I can open requisition and hire people. Yeah, that's fine. But actually, does it help you attract amazing talent internally and externally? Do hiring managers and interviewers use it all the time? Does it drive good collaboration? Are you actually making better hiring decisions as a result? Are you integrated with all of the vendors that you use, from Checkr all the way up the food chain? And the answer to those questions very often is not so much. And so I think in many ways, your HR technology tech stack should be approached in the same way that you approach the future of work in general, which is, how do I make decisions that are powerful and impactful for my end users? And if you take your tech stack through this lens, you will quickly end up at, I need specific tools for specific purposes. All the systems nowadays integrate nicely and they all communicate to each other. So it's not a problem like, oh, I need one system because otherwise integrations are going to be hard. Integrations are easy. That problem has been solved. So use this moment to actually get the platform, the solution that you need that's really fit for purpose and that integrates with the rest of your tech stack, as opposed to trying to force fit everything into one big project, one big system, which also speaks to adaptability and the ability to change fast. That would kind of be my answer. Be flexible, look at best of breed, and have tools that are focused on the end users and involve the end users in your decisions.
Yeah, I completely agree with Jerome, and I would just add a few things, but focusing on things that matter the most for your teams should be the number one priority. And number two should be empowering your teams. So can you give them that superpower to be able to deal with, what we are starting to see now in the candidate space, especially in the candidate acquisition space, right? Either it's feast or there's famine. There are either too many candidates applying to my job, and how the hell do I react to it? Or too many employees asking me questions, and how do I react to that? Or too many hiring managers frustrated with the experience. So how do we empower the team so they become the rock stars that we know they are? But again, I would sort of focus on three core areas that we have seen over the past 1 year. So one is, as teams, as people move remote, we've realized that the good companies, the leading edge companies, have really doubled down on and further enhancing the candidate experience as well as the employee experience. Jerome talked about from a candidate side, which is great. I would touch a few things on the employee side. So really that laser focus on productivity. Companies have been trying to figure out, like, are my employees actually productive now? Are we having productivity loss? If so, where? Giving them more self-service tools. So we've seen an adoption in pulses, surveys, in internal search technologies, bots that can respond to your own employees, content management, knowledge-based systems, so better collaboration tools. So we've really seen an investment around those lines. Number two is delivery resilience via automation. So again, as I mentioned, and this is a core theme for us, which is all around the talent journey, not just on the candidate side, but also post-hire. How do we automate every single business process where we don't need, because the humans are not going to be there offline? So how do we automate that? I'll give you an example. We work with one of the largest healthcare companies, hospitals in the US, and they have various locations. And when they had to do the scenario planning, they would do scenario planning once a year. COVID hits, the scenario planning moves to monthly. Then fast forward 6 months, they are now forecasting and trying to do staffing planning on a weekly basis. So where is this data, and how can I get my HR leaders, my staffing vendors to work in real time, where I can plan for bed capacity, I can plan for physicians, nurses. So that's a key piece of how automation has been adopted enterprise-wide. And the last thing I would say is location sort of independence via digital transformation. So that means what my processes are in the US versus Europe versus Asia Pac, it kind of all needs to be digitized. It used to be previously like, in the onboarding experience, I-9, I need to physically see your I-9. That's no longer true in the US. Same thing in countries like India, in countries like UK. All the things that were paper-based are moving digital faster than we ever expected them to move. So bottom line is, I think what we've seen the biggest change has been, we need to do more with less. And we are getting more candidates on a daily basis. We need hiring, but we have less people today. And that's the brutal reality.
Absolutely. So, we're talking about kind of building this roadmap for digital transformation and process change. And it's not an easy thing to do, but you all kind of touched on some really good points on how to build buy-in and create an effective plan. Once this is in place, the plan is in place, though, can you tell us how organizations might go about actually implementing this plan and driving process automation or change? And I'll start with Linda.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. So very timely conversation for us at Checkr. We did a big Workday implementation last year. We had finally outgrown our previous HR system, and we're very excited to launch this for the company. And it has really helped to streamline and connect a lot of manual processes that we had in hiring and onboarding across multiple systems. Helped save a lot of time between, HR, finance, IT, like all of those folks that are involved in supporting employees. But it was a huge change for us, for our team, and for the company. And we put together a very detailed launch plan that probably looks like many of the launch plans you all have put together. It included traditional training and documentation and probably all the things you would put in your normal training plan. But we did two things that I think were slightly different that I'll highlight here. One was we tried to find some evangelists inside the company that were key users that we could invest even more in enabling them to understand the new system. And one key group that we identified outside of kind of the normal stakeholders that are using the system every day, say like in payroll or again, IT, we focused on our executive operations team. And these are the folks that support our executives. And they are often a very informal kind of go-to resource for our employees with questions. So we spent some time with them making sure they really understood the changes, because we knew that they were going to be kind of a go-to resource for the org. The other thing that we did was we tried to gamify the experience for our employees. And I know Workday is not Fortnite or Among Us or whatever your teens are playing these days, but we were trying to make it fun. And we saw an opportunity at the same time to improve some of the data in our system. So we did a scavenger hunt. And we basically created a set of tasks that employees had to navigate. Things like adding your profile picture and confirming your contact information, attending a training. And for every task that the employee successfully completed, they would get a raffle ticket. And the raffle ticket would be used to win a prize. And what better prize could we offer this year, with all of us so tired of being at home cooking and making lunches? Lunch for a week. That was our kind of grand prize. Your choice, Grubhub, Uber Eats, DoorDash, like whoever you want to deliver your lunch. That was the prize, sort of like this year in COVID. And we found that that was just like a small but fun way for us to get our employees hands-on with the system in a way that was fun and low risk, and without the pressure of like, now I'm doing my performance review in Workday and it's the first time I'm touching the system. So yeah, definitely recommend it as kind of a way to think about change in a fun way.
All right.
Yeah, great. I'll give you sort of our perspective. So one thing I want to share with the audience is every year, for people who've heard of Okta is the leading identity company in the public market, but they do a survey called Businesses at Work. And every year they do this survey and they ask how many apps are people using within companies. So this is a survey across global 2,000 companies. Now that used to be, so over the last 3 years, the number of apps on average the global 2,000 companies are using has gone from 99 to 155, with nearly a 20% growth in just the past year. So again, that's just the sheer scale of number of apps that are out there that we expect employees to be using on a daily basis, right? So the key for us has been, when we talk to our customers, when we have those hard conversations, it's always around, I have too many apps, and there's a sheer adoption problem. So everything that Linda just talked about, we made a massive investment in Workday, but how do we get the adoption and drive the usage? Because if we do, then we will achieve the business outcomes because of which we made that large investment, right? So I think for us, the best companies that we have seen really first think through harmonizing the process, identifying opportunities that will allow them to automate more of their mundane and rote workflows, and deliver high-touch experiences where it really matters. So things that what Jerome was talking about on the candidate experience side, for example. But again, it all depends on the size of the organization, your brand, and how complex your company is. So I would recommend, and we highly recommend, people going with best-of-breed solutions. So exactly what Jerome said. So what we've seen, follow the talent throughout their life cycle. Pick the best of class in recruiting, pick the best of class in your core HR, pick the best in class in your employee training, onboarding, whatever the case might be. And we've seen the companies that have done that and really paid attention to harmonizing the data across those apps, they're the ones that deliver a real great experience for the candidates, for the employees, for the hiring managers, and the leaders. On the technology side, we've seen companies that are more data-driven companies. They actually have a much better idea around having a single source of truth. Let me have a single source of truth across all my candidates and all my employees, and then be able to run these apps on top of them. The companies that have more of a marketing bent and advertising bent, we've seen they are very good at things like candidate acquisition. because they understand how to acquire customers on one side, and they know what needs to happen on the talent side. So again, this whole point about customer experience mixing with employee experience is key, and the companies that are winning are the ones that can align those two data sets.
Interesting. Absolutely. Now, as we go through this, the inevitable $1 million question is going to come up, right? Once a company has done the hard work of starting a digital transformation, of creating these operational changes, the next question that the HR leader is often going to get asked is that working? Is it having the impact that you wanted? So what are some of the key metrics that you use to measure efficiency in HR? And are there any that you are not measuring but would like to implement soon? And I'll go to Aaron on this one.
Yeah, thanks. I love this question, especially because the idea about introducing more and more measurements and KPIs into our human resources conversations, at the senior level, as we often have talked about today, and justifying the investments into these technologies and this and that. It's important to know, is it worth it? So I think of the first part of the question here into two answers. One, I think about our operational impact to our human resources efforts. And the second side of the equation goes to the employee impact. So I'll give you two examples today of two KPIs or measurements that we look at DDI that are important. And when we start with operations and human resources, and we look at recruiting and onboarding and measuring this experience, for us in a high volume world, speed is very, very important. So understanding, hey, what was the length of our onboarding experience? It could even be in a traditional, employees scenario where it's maybe 10 days, 14 days. Are we improving that? Are we cutting that down for both the employees' experience, the applicants' experience, and getting through things quickly and not dragging along, and for our organization's efficiency? And that's the second operational goal. We look at conversion percentage in a high volume. To Anil's point earlier, like, I've got 1,000 candidates this week, and we need to get through them, not waste that investment. Because in my experience in 25 years of human resources leadership, the cost per acquiring, cost per acquisition of employees has only gone up. So speed, efficiency on that side is huge. When I look at the employee side of measuring effectiveness, one conversation I love to have, and what we've done for years at DDI I'm proud of, is we measure employee net promoter score. So a lot of us are familiar with applying NPS in different aspects of our business, and that here is huge. What is this end game employee satisfaction about everything through here? So much great conversations about picking the platforms with the employees in mind and things along those lines. So we measure all kinds of KPIs on the employee side, satisfaction, this and that, but the NPS is a big one. And to me, as an employee-first organization, retention, really actually looking at a measurement we all probably look at today is seeing our net impacts of all of our efforts, whether it's software or otherwise, to the employees really coming through. So, the net promoter score, the retention to the employee side. And then last but not least, I love the last part of your question on here, which is, is there anything we're not measuring yet? And as a metrics guy, two examples on this side that we're looking at are, one, figuring out and looking for more tools. So I'll take all kinds of ideas on this one as well, but we're really researching, measuring employee engagement along the way at different intervals of our career, through the beginning, along the way, different, and how that's defined. That's an evolving conversation. And then operationally, re-engagement. Finding and what is our ability to go back at those candidate pools for re-engagement efforts. So there's some great tools and things on that side. So a lot of KPIs on there, but that's where my brain starts on.
Jerome, do you have any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, of course. It's actually probably the most important thing that HR can do. Is to be measured and to measure the right outcomes, the right metrics. And for the longest time, I think we've allowed HR to be measured by administrative tasks, by process efficiency tasks, rather than by the outcome. And I love the ENPS question, right? It's like, okay, well, you just rolled out, I don't know, a new performance thing. Okay, great. Well, so what do people think about it, right? And that's the outcome. How does it actually work? I'll take an example or a couple of examples around hiring, which is a lot of what we do day to day in our jobs. And sometimes you have a metric that is counterproductive. One example here is cost per hire. You come to me and you say, my cost per hire is $1,425. As a CEO, first, I really don't care. And second, the only thing that goes through my mind is how can you make it cheaper, right? And so you're actually turning what is in fact an investment, because you invest in acquiring great talent, just like you invest in acquiring customers in marketing, and you're turning this into a cost center. So you can sometimes reframe a metric in a simple manner, and we've actually advocated for our customers to use a measure that we call hiring budget, which is total cost of hiring divided by new hire salary. And now you're saying, well, this year we're going to be investing 4.7% of our new hire salary in hiring. Okay, it's the same number, right? But then what goes through my mind as a CEO is like, okay, how does that compare? Well, it's actually kind of on the low side compared to our competitors. It's, of course, it's not 4.7% for everybody. It's maybe 10% for engineers and 2% for core staff that are easier to find. So you kind of, now suddenly we're thinking investment, and we're thinking, okay, what happens if I give you more money? So just by reframing a metric, you position yourself as a business partner, and you help executives to understand how to better support you. The second example of that goes along the same line is time to fill. Like a time to fill is 57 days. I don't care. Like, I don't know, like start earlier. What can I tell you? Like the urge to hire people, like we could hire 100 people this afternoon if we want to. Like if you don't care about cost and quality, you can hire 100 people in an afternoon. So actually really the time to fill is unnecessary as a metric. What's important on the other hand, is are we getting the right people on time? Which is the underlying question here. Well, why don't we answer that question? We call this hiring velocity. And hiring velocity is the percentage of jobs that are filled on time. And if you tell me as a CEO that 50%, our hiring velocity is 50%, well, I understand that actually it means that whatever I decide, only half of it is going to get done, because for the other half, we don't have the people to do it. So hiring velocity and business velocity are very, very linked. It also forces me to say, okay, well, so what does on time mean? And that means how does our business planning go? What are the SLAs that we put in place? And let's define together what does on time mean, and now use talent acquisition as a driver of business velocity. So hiring velocity and business velocity. So there are two examples of metrics that somehow you've been measuring, but measuring them in a way that kind of maybe forces the business or the execs to look at you in a faster, cheaper mode, right? Time to fill, cost per hire, faster, cheaper, which is not how you want to be doing. And then sometimes introducing a new measure. And I'll bounce off the idea of ENPS. We've introduced a hiring version of that, which is the Net Hiring Score, NHS. And it really works like an NPS. 90 days into a hire, you ask the manager on a scale of 1 to 10, how much of a fit is this candidate? And you ask the new employee on a scale of 1 to 10, how much of a fit is this new job? And then you take the 9 and 10s, the one who are like, oh, perfect, like my dream job, the best person I've hired in years, minus the 1 to 5, the ones who are like, I'm not sure, or they've made a mistake. And you end up with a positive negative score that is your net hiring score that tells you, are you hiring more great fits than poor fits, right? And that's a business outcome. This is what talent acquisition is here. We want to hire amazing talent on demand. Okay, great. Well, here is a net hiring score. And so if you have those metrics, if you focus your metrics on outcomes, I want to hire great people. I want them to be there when we need them. And I want to make the right level of investment, hiring budget, hiring velocity, net hiring score. Now you have a trio of metrics that trigger a very different conversation from a recruiting and talent acquisition perspective, and can be the foundation for your transformation.
Linda, we'll go to you.
Yeah, great. I'm going to talk about two slightly different metrics that we track at Checkr because of our mission. And we have a mission at Checkr to build a fair future, which for us means helping people who would be otherwise blocked from employment to get jobs. And as a background check company, that might seem like a kind of a non-traditional mission, but it is one that we hold very deeply. And we have a number of internal metrics we use to figure out like how well are we doing against that goal of building a fair future. One is a bit of an external metric where we track how many candidates through our product and through our customers are we actually unblocking. So these are folks that previously maybe had something in their background that would have impeded employment. How many of them are actually now getting job opportunities? Last year, we set out a goal of unblocking over 1 million candidates. And we actually exceeded that goal. I think it was like 1.2 million was our number that we successfully unblocked, again, using the tools that we offer to our customers and helping them figure out how can they do even more hiring. The other way that we look at how well we're achieving our mission is related to our own Fair Chance Hiring program. So as part of our broader D&I program, where we are trying to attract diverse employees to our company along maybe what you would think of traditional lines of gender and race, we also track our Fair Chance Hiring program. And we have a targeted metric of 5% Fair Chance Hiring across Checkr. And it's a metric that we look at as part of our regular operating metrics. And I think, again, one that helps us stay true to some of the core sort of beliefs of the company. I think the second part of your question was if you could track anything, what would you want to track more of? What I would say, I guess, in reference to some of the other things that folks have talked about, we have a lot, I think, of maturity around tracking our hiring and understanding our funnel and how fast it is and what our accept rate is and all of those metrics. But I would love to be big enough and have robust enough data to really understand not just how successful we are in hiring, but how good are we at finding employees who are going to be successful through their whole life cycle at Checkr, and is connecting that data that you get in the very beginning of an employee's sort of like relationship with the company all the way through. That would be sort of like an amazing to be able to pull that data all the way together.
Excellent. Well, it's a really important question around measuring effectiveness. So I'm glad that we got to kind of dig into that a little bit. The one thing, the average company now has something like 9 core talent applications, which is up from a few years ago. It's spending, I think, it's $310 per year or per employee per year, which is about a 30% increase over last year. So as HR leaders, offering insight into how to choose which tools and technology are going to perform best for your individual company and your individual use case, this is important. How do you recommend staying on top of learning about the most effective tools and technology for your industry and your company? And we'll start with Anil.
Yeah, thanks for the question. So, one is forums like these, obviously, attend webinars, attend some conferences like HR Tech Unleash, and obviously talk to your peers. I think that's actually the best source, I would say, of unfiltered opinions and sort of experiences people have had with other HR tech vendors. I think the bigger issue that I find with most HR technologies is when we think that we are from Silicon Valley, New York, Boston, wherever it is, and we tell you how to run your business and how to bring your culture, your employee experience, your candidate experience on our platform, because we know the right way. Every company is unique. Every culture, employee experience, candidate experience is unique. You need to work with vendors that understand that difference and that are agile and flexible enough in their technology that the stack works for you and not the other way around. I see most companies taking 6 months to a year to just onboard an investment that they've made because they had to make it force-fitted to work based on the limitations and capabilities of that vendor. And that to me is the worst experience that can be. I had a conversation with the former ex-CHRO at Google, and that was a mistake. That's why Google traditionally has never invested in outside HR tech vendors. They do it now, but traditionally they're shied away because they have a very specific way that culture runs and the values run and the experiences need to run. Number two, I would say focus on innovation. Always have a budget for pilots. It's always great to be at the forefront of technology, see what the new vendors are, have a budget where you can actually test and pilot out with companies that are startups, that are young, that are willing to experiment with you and willing to develop the customer base based on the guidance that you're giving, because that's a really sweet spot to be in as you look to scale your business. So those are my sort of high-level tips.
Jumping in to add to the question on here, and it's just about learning and staying on top of the tools. I'm going to give a nod to networking on this answer. And what I mean by that, and taking that filter today, is to really look at what's around us. And so my thought to this really revolves around the idea of juxtaposition. And what I mean by that is look at what's next to us in our other departments that's not in human resources. Look at the tools that are being employed in our sales teams, in our finance teams, and in our operations teams. And I'll give you one great example that's had a significant return on the idea, which was in our onboarding technology last year for high volume recruiting. We adopted the idea of what we called the Domino's Pizza Tracker. Really, and this idea of visibility via communication via visibility and using these types of newer tools to simply communicate automatically to the applicants through kind of a tracking app where they're at in the process. Oh, your background check, thanks to our great partners at Checkr, is on the way, or this, or wherever you're at when you're waiting for screening. And that actually had a significant investment into improvement. So that's what I would offer today is lean on your networks, talk to the other department heads, what's working out there, and get creative. Look at those other tools out there because there's going to be applications of these great ideas that we see somewhere else.
Excellent. And Jerome, I kind of want to get your thoughts on this as well.
Yeah, as I think I was highlighting a bit before, getting creative in this moment is really the crux of it, and it's really the analyzing how tools and systems work and going out of normal ways. Like we are in a new world, and so literally embrace new ways of doing things. And it's like I said, it's the year of HR, and so let's use that moment to be creative and reinvent ways of working and show to the business the value that a solid HR team and function can actually bring and in helping companies achieve their goals.
Excellent. All right. Well, before we kind of draw things to a close, I do want to kind of circle back to the beginning of our discussion about core competencies for the HR leader of the future. And can you tell us what your advice is for the person who wants to get a more senior leadership role in HR? What would be your advice for the continued growth of this individual? And we'll go to Linda to start.
Yeah, I think the best thing that any HR leader can do is just get out and learn the business. Spend time with different teams, understand how your business works, how work is done, who your leaders are. This is something, I guess, tying back to my organizational sensitivity, like that's how you develop the understanding of who your key leaders are and what the team is ready for. And it could be shadowing sales pitches. It could be sitting in on customer service calls. It could be going to an engineering hack day. I think there's so many different ways that you can get that intelligence about your team. This is still something I do regularly today. I sat down last week with our customer support manager, Josie, and she showed me how our team is working and what's changing and how we're putting in some new roles to better support our partners, as an example. And I walked away from that shadow session just really energized about seeing the creative ways that she's working and motivating her team. But also, I learned a lot more about her as a leader. And that really just like helps me understand the organization and helps me kind of guide the team in a better way. So definitely spend time out there with teams and just get to know how things are working.
Nice. And if I bring us home, yeah, no, please. And if I bring us home, you know, I was thinking of advice. It becomes, I really took this question in the context of, what advice would I give to an HR professional from a coaching and career standpoint to move what I might consider operational management of human resources to executive leadership? And so I offered, there's many ways we could go with this, but I offered two thoughts. One is, in our organization, we really focus on emotional intelligence. So really working on next level EQ is important. And, you know, when we think of EQ and emotional intelligence, we think of some of the basic tenets, right? Like self-awareness and, you know, some of these types of things. But really, if you get into it, there's many levels of this, from social awareness to higher levels of empathy and really embracing and leaning on these traits. And to me, from my organizations, the difference to, you know, the VPs of HR and the CHROs typically become these differentiating skill sets. They have the technical skills, but it becomes to that next level. And then last but not least is the idea of what I would call for us today leadership capacity point, which is really scaling your HR programs and objectives through other leaders, not just managers, right? We all know how to like run our HR and scale the organization there. But when you get to this next level of executive leadership, you have leaders behind you. So it becomes from leading through managers to really leading through junior executives and other directors and leaders of that nature. And when you can really embrace these skill sets, it, in my experience, has let our senior executives move to that next level in their careers individually.
Excellent. All right, well, we're going to move on to a poll. We just want to ask kind of about your interest in, you know, some of the folks that you've heard from today. Would you like to hear more or learn more about their this group of partners? If so, you know, go ahead and vote in our poll. And while we do that, we'll do one quick hit question, and feel free to just raise your hand and have a go at it. Someone asked, you know, they're very interested in knowing more about how to convey the need for digital transformation to those who just aren't ready. So it's something I knew would come up, so feel free to jump in.
I'm curious to know why they're not ready. Like, what's behind that? That would be my first question: is why aren't they ready? What's holding them back? Because I think when you really start looking at what opportunities digital transformation opens up for your team, like what space that gives them, like I feel like it's pretty compelling. In HR, there's all kinds of administrative work and many systems, as we've talked about, and you know, if you could go to your team and be like, you're not going to have to do that work anymore. Like, you're going to be able to do, you know, new strategic work. You're going to be able to help drive the business. Like, I think, you know, maybe some of the hesitation comes from not being able to imagine what the future could be differently. So that would be my advice, to try to understand, like, what's holding back, what's the objection, and how can you paint a picture of the future that is exciting.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think you said it there, administrating processes. Oh, sorry, Anil, did you want to say?
I would just bring a real life example, like tell them, like, when was the last time, like, how do you deposit checks in a bank? And have you tried to do it via a mobile experience? That's what digital automation is, and that's what digital transformation is. So I think use real life examples and try and inspire them that way.
Awesome. All right. Well, we are getting close to our time. So I do want to real quick before we leave, remind everybody that there are some handouts down in your resource list. So be sure to click on that. It should be kind of below the presentation itself. There are 4 downloads, one from each of our partners here. And I think you should definitely take advantage of those. There's some really good content there that HR professionals can definitely make the most of. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. Aaron, Anil, Linda, Jerome. This was fantastic. A really good discussion. I enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent. All right. Well, folks, until next time, do keep an eye on the HR Exchange Network, as always, to find more content like this and more sessions. We've got online events coming up, more webinars, all of it designed to help keep you, the HR professional, at the forefront of change. And until next time, stay safe.